The Dallas Cowboys get maybe their most impressive win of the season on Sunday Night Football. We'll break it down next on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we are breaking down the Cowboys' 26-24 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. And Landon, before we dive into this game, I just want to read you a tweet that somebody sent to me during the game. Now, this was late in the fourth quarter before the game was officially decided, but this comes from Chris. He said, "I am more proud of this team than I have been in any team in a long blank time." And honestly, to me, that's the takeaway coming out of this game is, yes, the Cowboys, they're not going to be making the playoffs. They were eliminated before the game started. They lost their quarterback. They've had injuries all year, and yet they've played so hard through it all. It's hard not to be proud of them.
Yeah, and I think, that's part of the reason that as a fan of a team, like you watch them even when they're bad, right? Is because they can still surprise you and make you proud. And I think that's why, I think a lot of people kind of that are very practical, very pragmatic folks, and I feel like I'm a pretty pragmatic person myself, that look at us like we're crazy because you want the Cowboys to win these games. And for me, it's like, yeah, I take pride when the Cowboys win. I like it when the Cowboys win. And so to see them in moments when they're not playing for playoff victory, I mean, like, they clearly got eliminated before this game started, and Tampa had everything to play for. Tampa had, playoff slotting, and the division for them to win. They had everything on the line. So to see the Cowboys go out and not only match the energy, but I thought they played with way more energy than Tampa did and more urgency with Tampa than Tampa did. I think it shows a lot to the football character of a team. I think it shows a lot about the leaders that are on the team. And I think considering the fact that Dak Prescott was up in the booth in Civvies, I think it speaks a lot to the leadership of this young team, right? And again, I know a lot of people aren't going to like this, and I don't know if I like what it means overall, but I think it shows a lot in what they feel about that coaching staff and how that team was coached, because they played with good discipline. They played hard, and they beat a team that they were, picked to lose against at home, even though they were at home. And I think they, like I said, it wasn't just that they won. Like they played better, and they looked like the better team on the field in this game.
Yeah, I mean, this game wasn't really as close as the final score indicates. The Cowboys were up by 2 scores late. They did give up a really quick touchdown, and that's what made this game a lot closer than what it should have been. But yeah, I thought like in the second quarter of this game, you could tell from several of the faces of the Buccaneers players, like,
yeah,
I think they were shook. Like, I think they anticipated that the Cowboys would come in after being eliminated. Absolutely. And they would lay down, and the Bucs would run all over them. And when the Cowboys jumped out to, what was it, a 23-7 lead, I think at one point, it was like, holy crap. And the Cowboys' intensity was just amazing all game long, not only on offense, but on defense as well. You had guys flying all over the field. After the game, Jerry Jones, he had a quote. It was basically to the effect of, Mike McCarthy's superpower is that he gets his team to play like it's a Super Bowl every single week. And it really felt that way on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And listen, I mean, we could talk about We'll talk about the criticisms that we have with him before the season, like before this season even started, like, with the playoff losses, that sort of thing. But I do think the one thing that you can say about McCarthy, and not that this is something that you would level against him, but this teams do play hard. They always play hard. Like, in the playoff, it's not that they're not playing hard enough in the playoffs. So yeah, I totally agree. I think he gets his teams up for these games, and sometimes they're not, quite as organized early in the games. And I think that's really what took Tampa Bay by surprise, is that I think that Tampa felt, you're right, that Tampa felt like they were going to be able to run the ball down the Cowboys' throats. But the problem is that before a blink of the eye, before they had the ball more than, I think even 10 snaps, the Cowboys were up 10-0. And so, like, the Cowboys took possession of this game early. It kind of changed the footing of the game plan. And maybe the Tampa Bay Bucks were going to have the ability to kind of, I mean, if you saw it in the middle of the game, maybe they were going to be able to run the ball and take control of the game. They just never got the opportunity because they got punched in the mouth first. They took them a while to kind of recover from that. And frankly, it took all of of Bucky Irving's runs to kind of make up for the high variance nature of the Tampa Bay Bucks passing game. So yeah, I think the Cowboys came out and played just the perfect kind of game plan that they needed to take control of this game and win it the way they did.
It was just nice to see them play, not a complete football game, but like all three phases had nice plays, right? Like Brandon Aubrey continues to be an absolute weapon. The defense got stops. They got a couple takeaways late. The offense was incredible in the first half. It's been a while since they've had a complete game like this. The last time I think a quality win was probably, what do you want to say? Pittsburgh, Washington.
That's what everyone, yeah. I mean, that's the radio broadcast as well, right?
I would say the Washington, the offense was so bad for most of that game. Scoring happened late, but it's probably the Pittsburgh game. And now in hindsight, you look back at some of the wins that they have this year, kind of impressive.
Well, yeah, I mean, frankly, I think the thing that was so impressive about this is that it was against a good team, and both teams were playing good football. It wasn't like you were dragging a better team down to your level, or that you were playing up, feeling like you were playing up to level. It felt like it was you were watching two equal good teams playing good football. There weren't a ton of penalties. There weren't a ton of stupid, boneheaded plays. I think it was two solid football teams playing against each other, and the Cowboys won.
I want to go back to our keys that we had for victory back on Friday. We said, if the Cowboys can just get this game into the fourth quarter, you might see some tightness come out from the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And I think you saw that. You saw Baker throw a ball down the field on first down, trying to, basically go for the kill shot. Jordan Lewis picks it off. You've got Baker trying to do too much in some of these, scrambling, throws it to Bucky Irving, which is a great play by Baker. Irving's trying to do too much and he fumbles. It just felt like the moment was a little bit too big for Tampa. And if you've followed any Bucs reporters all year, this has been the problem. They've looked awesome when they're playing in a 1 p.m. Eastern slate, but when the lights get really bright and they're playing on prime time, they've been awful all season long. The Cowboys, we talked about this on Friday, Cowboys are just more used to playing in that type of pressure, in that kind of situation. And they were the more composed team on Sunday night. It was crazy to watch it play out.
Yeah, I mean, again, because that's the thing, is it's not even like these Cowboys have a bunch of veteran superstars out there that are playing, especially on defense. Like, you got a bunch of still young street free agents, but because they played for the Cowboys and it's the 15th game of the season, they've already played 6 primetime games, whether they deserved it or not. So yeah, I think, the Cowboys were ready for the moment. They, and maybe it went the opposite way, right? Like, maybe the fact, hey, the playoffs are out of reach. There's nothing to lose here. We've got nothing to lose. And so they just cut it loose and played, and Tampa played tight, and the Cowboys played like a team that was equally talented, despite the fact that, they came into this game with all these injuries, and yeah, they're just not at this point. They played like the better team, and they're probably not talent-wise.
I want to talk about the defense because I think they were really the big story in this one yet again. Let's talk about the Cowboys unit led by Mike Zimmer next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. PrizePicks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Plus, this holiday season, They're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking for Jordan Love to throw multiple touchdowns against the Saints on Monday Night Football. It's quick, it's simple, and it's so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Lena, let's break down the Cowboys defense in this one because I thought they did a pretty good job. They allowed 2 touchdowns in the second quarter, but for going up against one of the NFL's top-ranked defenses, top-ranked offenses, without both starting linebackers, without your all-pro corner in Trayvon Diggs, with all the injuries they've had at the defensive line, to only give up 24 points and 7 of those, which came really late. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I think, the thing that you worried about is the linebacker play, and I thought that they held up well. I thought Mayers Leofau especially had a really nice game. Yep. Constantly clawing at the ball, constantly, making big hits. I thought Donovan Wilson really, really showed up. Really, the secondary overall, I thought, had a really outstanding night. Wilson had made several big plays, including a sack, and I don't think he got a fumble. I think they turned that back over, right, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and just over, and a huge hit on Mike Evans that caused an incompletion. And then obviously Deron Bland with the takeaway, the fumble, Jordan Lewis with the late interception, which was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, just the guys that, the more veteran guys in this team, especially in the secondary, really stood up. And again, listen, the fact that you were able to create a situation where the Tampa Bay passing game was basically D2 for most of the game. I mean, outside of those 2 kind of 2-minute type up tempo passing drives that Baker had, they weren't really able to consistently move the ball through the passing game. Except for, the times that they were on that drive, and they were able to get some chunks at different times. But then when they got in the red zone, either there was a turnover or the Cowboys were able to lock it down. So yeah, I mean, I think, again, considering what they were able to do against probably one of the best defenses in the NFL in the Chargers. The Bucks, what the Bucks were able to do against the Chargers last week. I think that what the Cowboys were able to accomplish against a Buccaneer offense that was really hot. I think they had won 4 straight. That was really impressive. And it seemed like they were putting up big numbers at points. And when, there was a middle part in the game there where it felt like the run game was going to be, more than the Cowboys defense could handle. But by the time the second half rolled around, they kind of seemed to adjust some different things. Those 5 and 7 and 6 and 12 yard carries that Bucky Irving were getting were starting coming down to 1 and 3 yards. And then they were forced to throw the ball more. And that's when things started to really go downhill. And the high variance that we talked about Baker started to really come into play. And the Cowboys were able to create turnovers and stops on third downs. And I think that was the big difference was, they were able to get early success, and then keeping that run game intact after the second half was really a key moment for the defense.
Yeah, and let's also be honest, they were playing with a pretty compromised Micah Parsons. He missed Friday practice with flu. You could see in the second
too.
Yeah,
but he was tired.
You could see in the second half he was just gassed. Which is not to be unexpected. This happens to players as the season goes on. Stephen Jones even went on the radio on Saturday and said it's going to be a little iffy if he plays, but we think he'll make it out there. You saw it in the second half. But you wanted to make a comment about what Brad Sham said about Mike Zimmer and his defense. Can you let listeners in on that?
Brad Sham, always fantastic. If you get a chance, you guys should listen to the Cowboys radio network. But on there, he was talking about, they were just talking about the defense in general. He's like, what? And Babe Loffenberg asked Brad, what do you think about, what happened early in the season? And Brad basically made the comment that he just didn't think that the Cowboys defense had fully ingested the defense, Mike Zimmer's defense. He cited a couple different folks, including Golston that he had spoken to. And they obviously knew the defense. Like when the calls came in, they were getting lined up and everything, but that's still different than knowing all the calls and like making all the adjustments, especially pre and post snap, And so I just think that is another element that we don't talk about enough, right? Is that the Cowboys defense and everyone on this defense just knows the defense a lot better than they did even 10 weeks ago. And again, we talk about the kind of many different pieces that failed early in the season that amounted to the collapse. I think that's just another component of just a lack of knowledge about this defense, which went, again, when we talked about from simple to complex, on purpose. I think that transition was a lot more difficult in the early part of the season than we discuss enough.
Yeah, and I think this game, they didn't have their green dot player in Eric Kendricks. And the week before, they lost to Marvin Overshown, who is their weak side linebacker. So they've had some of these critical injuries at certain spots, and they've all been like concentrated in certain areas.
Yeah.
Early in the year, it was all to the defensive line, right? They lost Micah Parsons, Marshawn Nealon, DeMarcus Lawrence, all within 1 week of another. And then they've had it in the secondary with their corners. Now it's at the linebacker. So we've never gotten to see this defense even 80% healthy. They've been rotating a bunch of different players in there. I think, what was the stat? They've had
seven corners that have played more than 100 snaps for them. That was another stat from Bad Chan's team. But yeah, like 7 corners that have played more than 100 snaps for the Cowboys this season. That's crazy. That's a lot of snaps. 100 snaps is 2 games basically, right? So like that's a lot of snaps for these guys to be playing, and for that many corners to be playing for you. That's almost 2.5 teams worth basically.
Yeah. So if you're going to make the case for Mike Zimmer to come back in 2025, it's, hey, look at this defense, how they played in the second half of the year. Once they got Micah Parsons back, once they started to understand the defense, and even with all the injuries against some of the better offenses in the league, whether it was Washington, who they held down for the most part in that game, whether it's the Bucs now, they crushed the bad offenses, which is what you need to do. Things are trending in the right direction. It was all-time bad in the first month of the season, but it's gotten better as the year has gone on. You're hoping with another year in the system, some of these younger guys, whether it's a Marshawn Nealon, maybe it's a Wanye Thomas, like those guys can help be difference makers in 2025.
Yeah, listen, I mean, we don't need to have a conversation about the Mike McCarthy tenure about that, and I think we're going to have a ton of conversations about that, but I think I've seen enough right now. I'll say this, that I think if the Cowboys wanted to bring back Mike Zimmer, I would be okay with it. I would be
independently of Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if that's an option or whatever. I'm just kind of staking my claim. I think I've seen enough now that I get it. I think he still has it as far as a defensive play caller. And I think that that you're even going to get better results with personnel more tailored to what he wants to do with a season of draft and another season of just kind of them running the system.
I don't want to get into a big conversation about whether they should keep the mics or not, but like, it feels like if you've made the decision to keep Mike Zimmer, you might as well keep Mike McCarthy, because if you're getting rid of McCarthy and keeping Zimmer, then you're kind of undercutting the next head coach that comes in anyways, right? Like, I want the next head coach to be able to pick his staff. So you kind of have to choose one or the other, at least in my opinion.
I mean, you're not wrong. But I also know that it's not like it doesn't work like that around here. It certainly isn't wouldn't be unprecedented for the Cowboys to do such a thing. So
yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see. All right, let's talk about the Cowboys offense, which scored 23 first half points with a backup quarterback, several backup offensive linemen, your all-pro receiver, barely making it through. We'll get to that unit next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here. Unfortunately, our Cowboys won't be making it, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a win. I love betting on the futures. I love betting on the awards. You can still go out and bet on like the Coach of the Year award, Defensive Player of the Year award, which I have no idea who's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. One of the weirder seasons we've had. But go check it out right now on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. One in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcast. All right, Lana, let's talk about the Cowboys offense. 23 first half points. Cooper Rush was fantastic in the first half. CeeDee Lamb had 100 yards. He was the first Cowboy receiver ever to have back-to-back 100-yard first halves. What did you think of that unit?
Yeah, and also I think CeeDee Lamb also crossed a whole bunch of milestones as well as total passing yards as well for the Cowboys, and as far as all-time Cowboys receiving yards.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I just think that early on you saw, and I think I even tweeted this out, that early on you saw, oh, it's going to be one of those kind of Cooper Rush games, right? Where like he was throwing the ball well, and he was seeing, there were a couple throws that were off. But I just think that, one of the things that you and I discussed before this game started was that when you're picking games, if you just kind of broadly speaking, it's always best to pick the team with the best quarterback. It's easy like that. It sometimes it boils down to that. Obviously, that's not the only factor, but that's a really great shorthand way of doing things, right? The fact that you got Cooper Rush out dueling Baker Mayfield, I mean, I think it speaks to the kind of volatility of Baker Mayfield at a certain degree. But I think the fact that he was able to play that way, and the Cowboys, were able to do what they were able to do on offense, move the ball, score touchdowns, score points at a rate that we just frankly haven't seen since Dak has been out. And frankly, maybe even, since Dak's been out, before Dak's been out. I think that and with no running game, right? Like that was the other thing that I thought was so crazy. We talked about all week that the Cowboys needed to kind of get the running game going. And they didn't. It felt like Hoffman and BB kind of struggled. Not that they didn't have reason to. Vita Vea and Kajaya Kancey were incredible in the middle. Yeah. So they just had real troubles doing anything or moving people off the ball, anything in the run game. So essentially, what they had to do is they had to facilitate that. Supplement that with the short passing game. You saw a lot more check down stuff, and I think that's where you saw. Dowdle actually have some success. I think he had 3 catches for 30 yards, almost all first downs, right? I think that's where you started to see them being able to kind of get into a rhythm. They started the game just doing a bunch of, very quick passing stuff, not a ton of complicated reads, just to get the ball out quickly, just to get the ball out to their playmakers. And they did it efficiently enough that they were able to go down and score a touchdown early. Next thing you know, you're up 10 points. And you're in a good spot to kind of dictate the terms of the game. And you wanted to run the ball, but they still couldn't run the ball. So, kudos to Cooper Rush to be able to continue to run and run an efficient short passing game, which had been a problem with him at different points when they had to do that. And for him to be able to continue to pick up first downs and score points, it was really great to see, and frankly shocking. I don't think we've seen this from Cooper Rush before. That much efficiency all in a row.
And it wasn't like it was only a short passing attack from Cooper Rush, because I'm looking at the box score right now. CeeDee Lamb had a 52-yard reception. Brandon Cooks had a 29-yard reception. Ryan Flournoy had a 26-yard reception. Jake Ferguson had a 21-yard reception. So that right there, that is 4 plays of at least 20 yards in the passing game. And again, the Cowboys had 31 rushing yards. I wonder how many backup quarterbacks in the NFL could win a game where you have 31 rushing yards. Cooper did not play a super clean game. He threw a pass at the end of the game that maybe should have ended the game, right? It was a horrible throw, but he gives you enough down the field and makes enough big plays to help you put points on the board and stay alive in these games. I think they scored points on 4 of their first 5 possessions of this game. Now, a couple of them were field goals where maybe you didn't want to have, maybe you didn't want to have to settle for a 58-yard field goal, but hey, points are points. That's all you can expect from a backup quarterback. I was telling one of my friends, Elliot Harrison, today, I said, And you get a backup quarterback that scores 26 points. Like, that is the high end of what you can expect from a backup. And it seems like Cooper Rush is delivering that more often than not.
Yeah, and look, we got to talk about CeeDee Lamb. I just,
yeah.
What a gutty performance, right? Just by a guy who clearly was not feeling well, still dealing with extreme pain in his shoulder, and just I was talking to somebody on Blue Sky about it. Like, every single time he was being tackled, he was falling to the ground and not being able to protect himself. Guys were wrapping up his arms and not dirty or anything, but that's just what was happening. And because of that, he's landing on that shoulder. It just felt like every single time he was being tackled, he was landing on that bad shoulder, unable to kind of stop him, protect himself from the ground. And he was wincing and coming off the game, coming off the field. And it just felt like they only used him when they needed him. But man, he just continued to come through and continued to make play after play after play when called upon. And the fact that he probably only played like maybe 50% of the
I don't even think that. Not even that.
Probably not. And he ended. I don't have the number in front of me, but he ended up with 105 yards. Like, on 8 targets. Like,
but that doesn't even account because there was a play in the second half, like one of his very few snaps. He comes in for like third downs and he immediately draws a pass interference. It was like a 20-yard pass interference call because he beat Jamel Dean right off the line of scrimmage. And Chris Collinsworth, I know you weren't listening to the broadcast, but Chris Collinsworth could not get over how hard CeeDee Lamb was playing because of the shoulder injury. He said most star receivers at this point in the season, when you're eliminated, they shut you down. But he's out here battling through a bad shoulder because he wants to be out there. I think the fact that he put on that performance and that Mike is out there playing through a bad ankle and the flu, I think you needed those two leaders to step up, and they did.
I could make an argument to me that what you just said is more important than whatever draft pick loss for these last 2 or 3 games.
100%.
Having those superstars learn to become, on their own, without Dak, without Dad around, like to be able to like grow up to being like the kind of leader on the field, not just like, because of name and draft status. That's going to pay dividends not only in 2025 but well beyond as well.
I'm going to give you another one that did the same thing. Jordan Lewis is playing with a Tyron Smith elbow brace on, and he's out there throwing his body around in the screen game, trying to make tackles. He's blitzing off the edge. He makes one of the most unbelievable interceptions that you can make. When you have a 30-year-old veteran who's about to hit free agency here in a couple weeks, who's battling a pretty serious elbow injury, out there playing as hard as ever, I think it says a lot, not only about your team, but your culture.
Steven, I know you listen to the show. I know you're a big fan, Steven. Sign Jordan Lewis.
I know. He's everything that you want in a slot corner, right?
Every time you've signed Jordan Lewis so far, you sure haven't regretted it, have you? Sign him again. Sign him again. Let's do it, please.
Yeah. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your Victory Monday. We might only have one more of these the rest of the year. We'll be back on Tuesday to break down all the latest Dallas Cowboys news.